The funeral is being held in Beirut of Hamas's deputy leader who was killed in an explosion on Tuesday. You're watching live images now from the Lebanese capital, where Salah Aruri was considered a key figure in the group considered a terrorist organization by several countries. He was its deputy political leader and co-founder of its military wing. Let's bring in DW's Abbas Al-Khashali, who is in Beirut. So we're seeing there those images of the funeral of the deputy Hamas leader getting underway. Just walk us through what exactly the details are here and what we might be seeing transpire.
Sarah, the funeral started at Al-Judeida Road in Beirut and then arrived the mosque, Imam Ali Mosque, in about 2 kilometers south of this area. And then they will head to Al-Shatila refugee camps, Palestinian refugee camps. The Al-Aruri and his both campaigners, Azam Al-Akra and Muhammad Al-Rais, will be buried in the Martyrs, Al-Shuhada cemetery, later. So there are many politicians, they take a place in this funeral, and many political message for sure from Palestinians and Lebanese being sent.
What is the situation right now in Beirut? What is the mood?
In Beirut, it's quiet, to be honest. After the speech of the General Secretary of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, last night, but on the same time, they are waiting his speech tomorrow. Because he was talking about he will go more deeply to discuss different topics. So we'll see what he will say tomorrow. This is the first side. The other side is the situation on the border. It's not quiet at all. There is shelling, and there are attacks and from both sides. So in Beirut, it's quiet. The people the life is going on, and the people are feeling a little bit calmed.
Thank you so much for your reporting. DW's Abbas Al-Khashali reporting from Beirut, where, as we have mentioned, you were seeing images there of the funeral of Salah Aruri, the deputy head of Hamas.
You're welcome, Sarah.
Iran's supreme leader has promised a harsh response following 2 explosions in the country's south. The death toll has now been revised to at least 84. The blast happened near the grave of the top general Qassem Soleimani. Mourners had gathered for a ceremony marking 4 years since his assassination by the United States in a drone strike. The U.S. has denied carrying out this attack and says that it has seen no evidence of Israeli involvement. And let's get more. I am joined now by Middle East expert Daniel Gerlach. Daniel, welcome to the program. Iran is blaming the U.S. and Israel for these attacks, as we've heard, and the U.S. has dismissed that claim. What's your assessment in terms of who might be behind it?
Well, as far as I understand, the Iranian leadership, when we talk about President Raisi and we talk about Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, have not directly blamed Israel and the United States. One of Raisi's deputies, let's say political surrogates, whatever you want to call them, has mentioned this, but it seems to me that the Iranian leadership itself has not issued such an accusation. I might be wrong, but this is my understanding of the new situation at the moment, and for good reason. I don't think the Iranians see an American and an Israeli hand in there, but they have been accusing dark forces that are driven by a foreign agenda that is something else. So they don't believe that it's a direct, intel operation, and it seems that it is not. There is a number of insurgent groups in Iran that have the capacity of conducting such operations. One of them hails from the southeast of the country, from the Baluch Sunni minority, and it used to be called Jundullah, the Army of God. It then changed its name to Jaish al-Adl, the Army of Justice. This group has conducted attacks, insurgent attacks. The Baluch people have paid a high death toll during the protest last year. And of course, there is good reason for Baluch people to be, in a way, angry and also radicalized. And they have also accounts to settle with the Revolutionary Guard Corps, of which Qassem Soleimani was an important officer. But there could also be, drug cartels operating at the Afghan-Iranian border. There is an offspin of the so-called Islamic State in Khorasan in Afghanistan. So there is a number of suspects, but nothing, in my assessment, points to any Israeli or American responsibility, or let alone any of the other neighbors of Iran at the moment.
Okay, that's an interesting take. Daniel, there have been no claims of responsibility, we have to highlight, for those Beirut strikes, but there is a lot more consensus that Israel might have been behind them. With that in mind, these were targeted killings against senior Hamas members, or at least they appear to be, but they were in a stronghold, a Hezbollah stronghold in Beirut. Do you think that in particular is significant, and what could it say about the bigger picture here?
I think it is immensely significant. First of all, Israel has not denied any involvement, and that is standard operational procedure for diplomatic and security reasons. Why would Israel claim this if the entire world understands that obviously this was an Israeli operation? And some Israeli politicians have also a bit violated the discipline of the government by congratulating the Israeli security forces. No, I think it's fairly clear that this was an Israeli strike. It was remarkably precise. I've heard Palestinians ask the question, why is it possible for the Israelis to strike Hamas operatives with such precision and at the same time such high so-called collateral damages, civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip? So apparently it's possible to strike precisely on one side, but in Gaza that is not possible. I think we should at least take this point of view into account when we assess the situation. It is significant because what Israel demonstrates with this is twofold. One is they want to substantiate their claim that they can reach Hamas operatives wherever they want, and that there's no safe place, in particular not in Lebanon. The other is that this happened under the eyes of Hezbollah, that Hamas must have been guests of Hezbollah, the Hamas leadership. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been killed in Dahiyah. Dahiyah is a suburb, you can call it, of Beirut, which is the stronghold of Hezbollah in Lebanon. It is also, and that's what it's been perceived as by the Lebanese government, of course, a violation of Lebanese sovereignty and a strike to provoke Hezbollah, whereas the spokesperson of Prime Minister Netanyahu 2 days ago said, it was an interesting statement, interesting interview. He said, well, this was not a strike against Lebanon, it was not a strike against Hezbollah. But though he said we do not claim that we did it, but of course it is. And I think it's an act of brinkmanship, because Hezbollah is not interested, as we could see in yesterday's speech by Hassan Nasrallah, to launch a war with Israel. But of course, it might feel that it's being forced into a military response, and this could lead to an escalation at the northern front. So the situation is very tense.
Talk with us a little bit more about that northern front in particular, because we know that the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he travels to the region today. What message do you think he's arriving with, in particular, for Israeli officials?
Whereas there's been a lot of talking about a ceasefire in Gaza, which I personally think is absolutely necessary, or at least to a pause. I don't think Blinken comes with that expectation. However, he might come with a face-saving proposal for the Netanyahu government, which is not an official ceasefire or pause, but a significant reduction. End of airstrikes, end of strikes against civilian casualties, opening the checkpoints for much more humanitarian aid than has been provided so far. And he also, I think it's very important for the Americans not to let this slip, because for domestic reasons, this is not only a risk of regional escalation that we see here, but we also see that the war is, let's say, disturbing the primaries, the election cycle in the United States, and it may have President Biden look extremely weak and undecided. And he wants to get rid of this conflict as soon as possible. So I think Blinken needs to talk to the Israeli government, but also to Arab countries in the region to remain on board for a political solution for Gaza and not to give up.
Daniel Gerlach, Middle East analyst, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your analysis.
Yeah, sure.